Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us. I'm Anara Tabashaliva, along with co-hosts Dr. Victor Fett, Dr. Katerina Shrey, and our program producer, Professor Larry Sherry. We host a weekly discussion panel on Russia's war on Ukraine with guests from Ukraine, military experts, medical personnel, academics, artists, literary figures, and relief workers. Our panel is recorded and circulated nationally and internationally. We appreciate your comments and feedback. Special thanks to Marshall University Libraries and MUIT for making this weekly event possible. If you are joining us live on Teams, please feel free to use the chat to post any questions for our guest. A quick greetings to our viewers in Ukraine from Dr. Katerina Shrey.
Вітаємо наших слухачів в Україні з глибоким покліном. Ми далі свідки вашого страшного терпіння і також вашої великої сили. Дякую вам за вашу участь в нашій тижневій програмі.
Thank you, Katerina. It's my pleasure to introduce our speaker today at 226 weekly meeting of MUkraine podcast group. We welcome Dr. Oleksandr Zinenko from Karazin Kharkiv National University from Kharkiv, Ukraine, with a presentation on how the Ukrainians confront Russia on the Information Battleground. Alex is a researcher, a biologist, a colleague. Welcome, Dr. Zinenko. Microphone is yours. Please talk to us from Kharkiv.
Thank you very much. So I have to warn you that I'm not the expert in information welfare, and I'm just have my personal opinion and personal experience what happened in the first days of war, first months of war in terms of information circulation in the social network. You probably took my topic from the publication. I participated together with a wonderful team led by Artem Zakharchenko from Taras Shevchenko Kyiv National University. He is the leader of the research, and I was just involved, volunteered in this research during the first half a year, and later quit because of other occupations. I also hope that auditorium and hosts will help me to navigate through the today discussion, because I'm not 100% sure what you want to listen. I can start probably now, but I rely on your questions and guidance, if you not mind. Victor, can you hear me? Everything is okay, right?
Yes, everyone is here. We just turn off our cameras to reduce the wave with bandwidth. Yes, thank you.
So I'm just a biologist. I'm not specialist in information society, but still my biological point of view has some insights, I believe. So in the beginning, in the first days of war, I'm from Kharkiv University. Kharkiv is just few tens of kilometers from Russian border. I have to evacuate my family, my kids, and we moved to Lviv, which is opposite side of Ukraine in the west, some 800 kilometers from that point. And already next day we were there. And of course, like many Ukrainians fleeing the war, we also wanted, together with my wife, to help somehow to Ukraine to withstand this aggression. So first days were quite hectic. We found some volunteering work, unload trucks with humanitarian aid, donate, try to do something. And already in the first week, there was a request to analyze information from social networks. What is going on? And first days were absolutely crazy, because nobody knew anything. Official information were lacking in many cases. Something was going on, but nobody knew what exactly, and a lot of fear, a lot of disinformation, a lot of fake news and trolls, attacks on social networks and internet. And the team of Artyom Zakharchenko decided to analyze this. And the task was quite simple, was to read every day several hundreds of news randomly selected from social networks and from news agencies on internet, and code them to the basic emotions and messages. And of course, it gave us some kind of busyness to be involved in something. So it held us, me and my wife, in a sane condition for a while, being used, being useful, do something meaningful. And after a while, of course, it became a kind of a work and duty. And in the same time, I start to read and analyze this news by myself. Later, our work was, summarized and published as a separate chapter describing differences of a discourse, war discourse in Russian segment of internet and Ukrainian segment of internet. We can speak about this specifically, but in the same time, I have something beyond the publication we made after that, because I'm a biologist and I have different levels of understanding of information processes and different analogies and probably different experience from my field. So I can start describe the results, basic results, and you can maybe add something and ask something. So in the beginning, we have to sort out Ukrainian sources from Russian sources. And as you know, probably, Ukraine has considerable part of population who are talking Russian language. And it was amazing for me. So the news or posts from social networks were randomized and not always having tag where it is from which geographical location and which country it comes from. And first phrases of Russian-speaking Ukrainians posts and very first words of Russian-speaking Russians I saw by my eyes. They were different already at that moment. I could say that this is from Russia and this is from Ukraine, not reading the entire sentence, not reading the entire text which I was analyzing. Why? Because the language is different. The same Russian language is different in Russian-speaking Ukrainians and Russians in Russians. And I noticed that Russian posts are overly complicated and already often contain some message and some opinion and some siding. So instead of pure information, it already has an opinion instead. So it was preparing in the first words of a sentence towards pushing you in some direction and some decision and siding with some of the sides of a conflict. And it was easy to sort them, because of this criterion. And later, that appears to be one of the main outcomes of the analysis itself. While Ukrainian discourse is decentralized, heavily decentralized, and it's less hierarchical and more difficult to define and more fluid, and you cannot just put information on the top of a pyramid and look how it disperses in society. Ukrainian society, even in social networks, was different. information was circulating horizontally and assembled in the networks which are not governed from above. So it was amazing to see how response to tragic attacks on civil infrastructure, on civil buildings, casualties, etc. So it was processed in a society in a way to understand what to do next, what could be the response, and so on. And in the same time, so amorph network of Ukrainian society was able to solve the problems, while Russian segment was translating some message from a top down. It was classical propaganda with many attempts to influence public opinion. And in the same time, the goal often was to seed a chaos and atomize society and create truths to every group, target group of society. So take a society as an entirety and send several conflicting messages into it to group different sub parts of his society in separate groups, which will never align the point of view and will never act as a entirety. So this was probably the most important and most telling the story result of our observations. It's nothing new, so it coincides with the analysis or opinions of different people who analyze and compare Ukrainian and Russian culture. It has many examples how it happened in occupied territories where Russians tried to find the main person and they couldn't find a main person because everybody was main at the certain moment. And we have more or less the same with our government. Ukrainians are notoriously bad in constructing, strong government and strong country, but in the same time, this decentralized form of organization is very difficult to destroy because you don't have the point where you apply the brutal force and destroy the whole pyramid, because pyramid doesn't exist. So you see, and I actually start recently thinking about society as a collective mind and bring the analogy of a brain activity, and with some help from artificial intelligence, with discussing with different ChatGPT or Gemini, I understood that this is not new, and many people came to the same conclusion that there is no intelligence except of collective. Even in our mind, our brain is a collective intelligence of our neurons. And if you connect people, and the internet and social networks provides you very good way to connect people and let them exchange information, you will have some emergent properties of this system. I hope you are familiar, and I'm pronouncing and telling the right terms. You know what are emergent properties of a system.
We recognize the words. Yes, thank you. We may not know definitions, but you're perfect. We understand and we admire, Katerina.
Yeah, No, so I actually don't know what that specific phrase means, but I am very grateful for how clearly you're laying out the analogy that that even one mind is organized of many neurons, and the internet is providing individual peoples to be the equivalent of those neurons working together. So I am the non-scientist here. You have a bunch of scientists and linguists and cultural experts, and so even those of us who are non-scientists can clearly follow your logic. Thank you. This is very, very helpful and very, very interesting. Thank you for doing this.
Yeah. Okay. So I didn't lost you yet.
No, you're fine.
Yeah. Okay, so emergent properties is something which appears in the system, which consists of different parts, but neither of the parts has this property. So you have, for example, car parts, some wheels, engine, seats, driving, steering wheel, etc. And you will not drive on an isolated wheel, and you will not drive on isolated engine, but if you assemble them, you will have something you can drive on. Yeah. So the society also, it consists of individual people, but when you will connect them, it will have some properties which will not appear on individual level. And I believe we will. It's a tricky thing because we are trying to understand the system we are part of from the position of the part. So we are trying to understand how we are acting together from the position of an individual person. And maybe it's not always possible, but my fear, and my actually biggest fear, that many people now understood that society works like that. And again, we can continue this analogy of a brain and society as a connection of different brains. And we all, not always, but often have some irrational fears and likes and dislikes. We may have hallucinations, especially if we use some substances, and some ideas will influence us, and some people may influence us just by interaction, by communication. And the same way we can influence the public opinion and public intelligence, like and social networks is a miracle if you have undamaged, healthy people who want to see other people happy. But in the same time, if you have damaged people and evil mind who is trying to influence this social network of brains, you will have Brexit, you will have wave of hate, you will have all this toxic sludge which is now happens in social networks. And I think that unfortunately somebody is already working on that to screw the system and to influence us. And my fear that one of such person is Vladislav Surkov, for example, who is a mastermind of Russian transition from democratic way of development towards authoritarianism, but very special type of authoritarianism. You probably know that he was on several positions in government in Russia, starting from the 2008 or so, and he tried to organize every part of activity of Russian society, even like governing and directing opposition toward doing something. So he intuitively, or maybe he's clever enough to understand how society works, he start to pump up hallucination in this collective mind towards some, condition where it may become easily governed by the authoritarian power. So Russian society is a brain on a heavy drugs watching horror movie. That's my analogy. And that's not, natural condition of society. Usually people who are, again, not damaged in the childhood, they want other people to be happy because they feel piece of happiness from observing other people being glad, and distressed seeing other people being sad. And it's also not new. You may know Adam Smith, who invented some laws of economy. When people are trying to get money, to earn money, they create a common goods. So they working to be rich themselves, but at the same time they power up the economy. And this is very famous, his idea. But another not famous idea from him is that you don't need any religion or external moral to have a society of people who want to be happy and want to see other people happy. So you have a moral behavior of people. Do to others the same you want to be done to yourself. But it doesn't work if you have, person with trauma, with childhood troubles, and if you raise people in a way that they are damaged and want to compensate the humiliation, again, you will have a society which is similar to society we have now in Russia. This is my belief. And I was born in Soviet Union. I have quite good experience of to be raised in Soviet Union. I remember what was the Russian or Soviet in school at that times, and I think it didn't change much even now. So that's more or less, yeah. That's more or less all what I wanted to say. That the main topic of today's meeting. If you have questions, you can direct me, or I can develop some thesis.
We surely have questions. You, as a scientist, you outlined in few words so many issues and questions of society. I mean, I especially admire, as a fellow biologist, I admire your position, which kind of avoids sociology or even anthropology here and gives us the skeleton of your thought. But let me first give microphone to Dr. Deutsch. Leonard, please ask your question. You are muted. Please unmute.
Okay. Yes. You mentioned monitoring Ukrainian and Russian sources, but there were also reporters from Europe, even American television, New York Times, and others. Did you have access to those sources too, in order to figure out what was actually going on?
Yeah, it was too much for me. No, we didn't do that because there are resources, time resources, and we were limited. We were only a small group to cover all the types of news from other languages. Certainly, it would be interesting to see what is going on there too, but no.
Thank you.
Thank you, Leonard. More questions or comments, please, Katerina.
I would like to go back to the first, I think, half when you were speaking, and you talked about how you can tell quite quickly if it's a Russian-speaking Ukrainian or a Russian-speaking Russian who's posting something quite early. And you mentioned because it's already anybody with intent for propaganda is already beginning their post with words to predispose you to it. And I just find the power of language is very strong and often underestimated. And so your presentation is very, very important and draws their attention to the power of language. And so my specific question is this: I'm wondering if you can think of a specific example of discourse surrounding an event, like something that happened in the news that we all know about, and how different people communicated about it. Is this possible? Like, I'm trying to think of an event that would have happened when the dam was exploded. I'm trying when we discovered the horrors of Bucha. Well, those are both horrible things. I'm trying to think of, is there a specific event or subject that people have posted on that you can tell us a little bit more in detail how the different sides communicate about it? I don't know if this is a clear question. Victor might need to help me get my question clear.
Yes,
It's a clear question.
Yeah. Okay.
It doesn't have clear answer probably, but it's a clear question. It was so I quit this activity in 2022, and late 2022. It was already almost 4 years ago. So I continue doing this like a hobby. So I continue doing this. Even now, just automatically, I'm reading news and usually distillate it from one paragraph. I have only one phrase, so that's simple. What are you asking is more, descriptive classification of how some event can be translated into some decision which is aligned across the society. So, for example, I start from the latest events, maybe not so tragic. There was an attempt from administration of the current President Zelensky to dismantle or subordinate some anti-corruption organs, persecutive organs in Ukraine. They were independent before, but the parliament tried to make them, accountable to the prime minister or something like that. Okay. Yeah, and it was, dictated by the situation that Ukraine is at war, and we have to control them, so we have to lose some democratic freedom towards being more protected from outside. And in the social networks, in the news, immediately there was a protest, and youth came with the cardboards and written funny stuff on it, and it was creative youth which invented many memes, and immediately after that there was an attempt to smear this activity as not appropriate, paid, etc. So there was a wave of memes which are supporting activity of a youth against new law. Then another wave back, probably I don't know for sure, I have no evidence, but still probably directed and orchestrated, trying to smear these young people as a paid people who are doing nothing for the victory. And many of these posts came from soldiers or those who are now serving in army. But in the same time, there was a back wave again, claiming that no, we are also soldiers and we are also fighting, but we support this activity 100%. So the outcome was at the end that the entire society had several voices and dialogue with itself, which ended up with a majority, synchronized around, no, this is not good. And the president, because president is somehow reading news and understanding what is going on in society, he's good in that, and he, withdrew this law, didn't sign it, and we have a solution. But it's not the end. It's not the end. But this is a good example of communication which is not broken.
Yeah, we've heard in previous guests have talked about, and I can't remember who it was, about one of the strengths of things happening in Ukraine, and this isn't so much about politics, but it's just the cooperation among people, this like the decentralized people just locally helping people, talking to other people, and getting things done. That seems to be a common theme in Ukrainian communication, that it's not hierarchical, but that it's very horizontal and very effective. So thank you. No, I really appreciate all this. You're in Kharkiv right now, and so we're not. You were in Kharkiv. You're in Lviv right now. Our hearts go out.
I am in Kharkiv. I'm back in Kharkiv.
Oh, that's how are things? How are things in Kharkiv? I mean, I think all of us go to bed worrying about various places, but Kharkiv is upmost in our hearts.
Thank you. Yeah, that's not good, but most of the people here are living the everyday life. I mean, there are a lot of militaries. There are some drones every day, and sometimes even missiles can hit randomly some places inside the city. But city is huge. It's 25 kilometers and 25 kilometers. And at the current activity, and again, as a scientist, if you calculate probability to be killed by a drone any moment, I think it's, excuse me, it's not higher than in some places in the United States to be shot.
Sad but true. Do you have enough food? Do you have water, medical care? All these things are infrastructure.
Everything is working. Everything is working. So it's a normal life, and everything works well. You can have a coffee. You can sit in a park. You can attend some concert in a safe place.
Wow.
You can have a public lectures, cinema, shopping malls, and of course, university cannot guarantee in-person classes, and that's why we have only online teaching, and only sometimes, and we are planning to open a safe space in the basement of university. We will host our students at least 1 week per month or something like that, but it didn't happen yet. And sometimes students are coming to the lab. Lab is working where I'm working. Lab is working, and we are working hard because we, by coincidence, got our first big grant to study biodiversity using DNA, and we advanced a lot since 2022. But this is a parallel process. It's not, connected to the war directly. It happens in spite of war.
Thank you. Thank you for the update. We again, Kharkiv is always in our thoughts, and thank you for the update and for the insight on the daily lives of our brothers and sisters in Ukraine who are living under very different circumstances.
Thank you. Thank you, Katerina. As others may have more questions, but I want to ask also, of course, I would be interested in your lab work, but I understand that it's not the topic for everyone. But at the same time, when you are talking about differences in, not really in propaganda, but in attitude of society on this side and on that side of the border, can you talk to us more, maybe comparing what is going on right now as we speak, which can only be described as panic, what we see on our screens in Crimea and Kerch Bridge and the Azov roads, this reaction of ordinary Russians who have been for 5 years indoctrinated, and who knows for how many years before, do they strike you as how different are they from reaction of Ukrainians to the beginning of the war, to atrocities, to how do people in Ukraine, how did they understand the situation? And above all, you're talking about self-organization. That's most important in this type of panic reactions. So what do you see, what you do not, what do you see there, what you do not see and did not see in Ukraine?
Yeah, but yeah, context is different, of course. It's difficult to understand what would be if Russia would be attacked by some, country, hypothetically. And I don't know what would Russian do. But for me, of course, it was amazing to see how organized were Ukrainians. I didn't believe in it. Yeah, were in the first days of war. I witnessed Lviv railroad station at that moment. I couldn't believe that there was no, crowd fighting for the places in the train, but instead there was a queue, which was maybe a kilometer long, and everybody stand there. And by the way, it was, I had many international students, and when I asked them about what was the most striking experience from Ukraine, even before the war, they said it's a queue for the bus, because there is no bus, but there are people standing in line. On how it is possible in India, we don't have that, especially if there is no bus yet. And I don't know what would be in Russia in this situation. But now, of course, after, it's a double mind, of course, of a post-Soviet society, when you know what is wrong, but there is official point of view, and you accept it superficially, and you have conflicting versions of what is going on in your mind, and you are silencing one of that, and speaking from the position of official publicly, so self-censorship and so on. So the sprouts of truth are coming out via indirect things. We are peaceful people. We don't want war. War is bad. We want this to end, never naming who initiated it, who is responsible, who did everything to start it, and who did nothing to stop it. They realize everything. So I see from the comments, but they are not brave enough to say something against. And of course, it's understandable, because the state machine will devour them quite quickly if they will say something directly. So I feel pity, but they are atomized, and they don't know on whom they can rely. They do not trust each other. Trust is a very important thing to have in society. Trust and rule of law, which protect you from being persecuted for your constitutional rights. Yeah? Constitution is acting in Russia, but no, it exists but doesn't act. Yeah, so you can be, persecuted even you exercise your constitutional rights, and that's why they are solitary and miserable, and they are complaining on something, not naming what they are complaining on. What is the reason?
To explain our English-speaking viewers across the world, I hope, which were not born like you and me in the Soviet Union, can you, as a scientist, make picture an experiment, let's say, mental experiment of this kind? Make a scale with Finland on the left, and North Korea on the right, and Soviet Union in the middle. And then we have evolutionary process over the last 30 years with Soviet Union falling apart, Estonia immediately emerging on the left next to Finland, and other 14 republics of the former Soviet Union diverging left and right, west and east, north and south. So what you were describing in as a biologist in social situation, I see. Tell me if what you think about it. I see as a rapid evolution over practically one generation of Soviet-born people, of course, admittedly with different backgrounds, but very rapid evolution of their reactions, traumas, infantility, propaganda, social obedience, hierarchical, all these features, and then coming in conflict in full scale in 22. So you're talking about 30 years time period in which we observe this amazing divergent evolution of two entities, like two anthills or whatever, in Russia and Ukraine, definitely with a lot of common background and even language background. But what you observed strikes me as evidence, recorded evidence of this evolution. Admittedly, we didn't have social media back in 91. We had payphones on the street and newspapers and television channels. But the sprouts, as you say, were there. And social media, of course, internet amplifies it millionfold, all these reactions and learning. So I have an impression that we're witnessing a kind of evolution which goes on with enormous speed every day, every hour, changing, because evolution in most broad definition is descent with modification, which means change by time. And we observe this change, not inherited, but learned evolution, Lamarckian. We observe it every moment. And what you are doing, what we are trying to do in this program also, is recording this process, is basically chronicle of current events which unravel with enormous speed. And this is remarkable, even if we are talking about 5 years, 4.5 years of this full-scale war as very long process. But I would say they incorporate what in European history at least would take hundreds of years before. The processes of self-government, processes of democratization and rapid societal evolution, what you described as horizontal systems, reformation of a kind. I'm talking too much. Please, if you can respond to at least some of my mental exercise.
Yeah, sure. I totally agree that this is very interesting process. But when you are prospecting changes, you are observing changes, and you are observing it from the terms of human life. So tens of years. But don't forget that there is a tradition and there is some inheritance, and I think that the depths of a cultural background is huge, and we without understanding it, we know something in an informal communication from our parents, and they from our parents, and so on and so on, and this is not very easy to formalize and write down. But still, Ukraine is a point between empires. So it didn't dissolve and didn't cease to exist in spite of being conquered and colonized and suppressed by either Turkish or Moscovian Empire or Poland, or it was always divided and always managed to survive. So we clearly have not only evolution, but also natural selection. And what we have now, we can continue with, biological analogies. What we have now, why Ukraine is important. I don't think that we are, the center of the world, but somehow we are a small gear inside the huge mechanism which is turning now. And we are on a turning point in general of future humankind, what it will be look like as a society on drugs, influenced by propaganda and governed by a few people who seize power, or will it be a fluid society which will decide the fate of itself by citizens? And both strategies are viable, and they are fighting now not by chance. It's a fate that they will clash, and who will be stronger. And unfortunately, I don't like this thing very much with outcome of my previous thinking about the topic. They are forged. Humankind is forged by wars, and unfortunately this evolution and selection is directing toward the most adapted society which can fight in the wars. And it's not good way to construct best society for the peaceful life. We tried, and Fukuyama believed that we are reached that point, that's the end of history. Liberal democracy is the best society for the peaceful coexistence, and world is global, etc. But simplification, as many things in science, and the situation is more complex, and we are thrown back to the situation of a Second World War, I think, and we will never forget our experience from the past, and it will not disappear just because we decide that we are in 21st century, unfortunately. And I would cite our former, one of the first presidents of Ukraine, who was Leonid Kuchma, who once famously said, "Тю, так це ж вже було." If you translate it, it was already. Everything was already, unfortunately, and we are coming back to the same point. Vicious cycle.
Very, very well said. And please, more questions or comments from the viewers and the panel, please. Leslie, please.
Yes, some of the things you've been talking about kind of remind me of some of the ideas of a scholar named Peter Turchin, who I've been reading a book by at times called War and Peace and War. And one of the things he's talking about is the formation of empires, and how empires tend to form when there's conflict along a clear cultural border, and that sort of smooths out any cultural differences in the people on one side of the border, so it helps them to cooperate. And Ukraine isn't an imperial power. One of the imperial powers he uses frequently as an example is Russia. But I think you could say that in the case of pretty much any nation state, conflict across a border tends to create cooperation within a border, at least if it's in any way functional society.
Yeah, external power will unify the country inside. Is it your question, right?
Yeah, basically.
Yeah, that's true. But don't forget that Ukraine was divided between Poland and Russian Empire. and it was amazing in the past, maybe 100 years ago, more than 100 years ago. And it was amazing that being more suppressed in Russian Empire, Ukrainians had more freedom in Poland temporarily, and vice versa in the next decade. And do not forget that they are both Ukrainians and come together across the border. And you know, I think it's a very neglected and forgotten factor of the Ukrainian nation origin. Always being divided, sometimes collaborating with imperial power, but it was a joke during Soviet times. Soviet Ukraine formerly was, republic in the Soviet Union. So it might have some independence, but in the same time, this independence was a fake. And we had a joke that every Ukrainian state body has Ukrainian underground in it. And again, that's difficult to deal with the people who know how to fight against empires, even being occupied.
It also is hard to understand here in the United States because it is exactly 250 years since this country fought against an empire, and the details are largely forgotten and translate only to festivals and fairs, but rather than practice. When the full-scale war started, our program actually started from a conference and presentation when we told local people that what is going on may only best be described in terms of American War for Independence, American Revolution, or maybe with some of the Lord of the Rings emotions added to it, because there is nothing like this in pop culture, even in Europe, which has been more or less peaceful and silent for 80 years. And of course, they forgot or suppressed the memory, which in Ukraine never really disappeared. And thank you for all your insights. Please, more questions or comments from our panel. Dr. Zinenko talks as a witness of history today. I'm not afraid of big words here because every moment of this year and next year will be so precious that we all will forget them. How important this, how cutting edge these moments were, and we are so glad that we can record these messages for the future directly from Kharkiv, directly as modern technology allows. And honestly, Alex, we here feel like Star Trek crew very often when we observe and talk to locals, but we cannot help directly, but we are trying. But Star Trek had their prime directive that you cannot meddle into another planet societies, and fortunately we can on this planet. So
I have a provocative suggestion.
Please.
To help
Yes.
yourself. You
Yes.
are partially in trouble now. I believe that I'm looking at the United States now. I spent 1 year in Ohio, in Columbus. I'm former Fulbright scholar, and yeah, it's amazing to see how United States has changed since last 2 years or so.
It has. Columbus is next door to us. We are on Ohio River. So some of us live in Ohio, some live in West Virginia. It's about 2 hours drive from from Columbus. So you know how local people live and think, and you also know, of course, how far they are from your place. They're closer to Greenland than to Ukraine on this continent. And all this is pretty theoretical, but we are trying to not just to publicize, but to make these connections. We have had dozens of people on our program, and we are very glad and humbled to serve as a prism to focus these messages. And I think we will be glad to see you again on this program because you are very vocal and extremely valuable witness.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And I will ask Dr. Shrey to say a few words in Ukrainian to our viewers in Ukraine. Katerina, please.
Дорогі браття і сестри в Україні, ми зберігаємо вас у наших щоденних думках і молитвах. Нехай милосердний Бог тримає вас у своїй опіці. До наступного тижня. Прощаємося.
Слава Україні!
Героям слава!